focus is really on innovation and helping individuals, teams, and organizations to harness the power of the creativity that all too often lays dormant. And, as business professionals, as adults, we often have had that creativity suppressed by well-intentioned teachers, parents, etc. But oftentimes corporate cultures can help to stifle that. So my mission is really to help bring this back out and harness it for growth, harness it for business results. So let's see. Okay, I'm going to start with a little question today. I'm going to do things a little differently. So let me ask, and you can chime in if you like, or we can do it via chat. But who is the top map maker in the world today?
I'm going to go with Google.
Great. Okay, good. That was kind of an easy one. They also own Waze, huge international player. Okay, little harder question. Who was the top map maker 20 years ago?
I feel like MapQuest was really big, but I could be wrong.
I think that's pre-MapQuest, though, actually, right?
Yeah, 20 years? That might be.
It's the company that
I'm
MapQuest
25.
used to make their maps. I look forward to the answer.
Yeah. Well, okay. Yep. Okay, good. All right. So the answer is Rand McNally. So these guys were the top map maker 20 years ago. But what's more impressive to me is that they were the top 120 years ago. So these guys have had a lot of success through the years, right? But somewhere in the last 20 years, they forgot to do something critically important. They forgot to innovate. This company was founded in 1856. At their height, they had over 5,000 employees across the globe. They had some of the most important map innovations, and they had, the best cartographers in the world. But these guys fell into a trap that hits too many companies and too many careers. The trap is that they became intoxicated with their own success. They believed that if they kept doing things the way they'd always done it, that they would always have the same success. So they failed to challenge the status quo. They failed to adapt. They failed to innovate, and then they simply failed. They've been bought and sold several times. They've had layoffs. They've had setbacks. They are now a mere fraction of their former selves. And I would argue, I don't know if you agree with me, but it's an antiquated and outdated form of maps in today's environment. So the lesson to us is clear. We have to remain a source of disruption rather than having this disruption thrust upon us. And to do so, we have to practice innovation on a daily basis across all of the roles and functions in our organizations, right? That's the key to our future. That is how we will continue to win. And this is even more important today because so many things are in the process of changing. In a lot of our worlds, we work out of offices that look like homes, and we live in homes that look like factories, right? In some parts of the US, you can use an app on your mobile device to have gas delivered to you at your office, at your home, wherever your car is parked. So you don't even have to go to the gas station anymore. This is an LED-based street crossing that alerts pedestrians when it's their turn to cross the road, and it alerts motorists when a hazard has entered the roadway. In some parts of the world, including the UK, you can get a pizza delivered by a drone. Speaking of drones, they now have drones that will bring emergency supplies where humans cannot traverse. Maybe it's a fire, an earthquake, you name it. And my last example here, this is a house that was printed in under 24 hours and for less than $4,000. So everything is changing, right? Technology, transformations, they're happening at an increasingly fast pace. And in order to take advantage of them, in order to survive through the change and thrive, I would say we have to embrace this type of innovation. I would say we have to leverage probably the hottest technology of all. And it's not augmented reality, it's not machine learning, it's not AI. It's human creativity. That becomes our one source of sustainable competitive advantage. It's the one thing that cannot be outsourced or automated. So as I like to say, no matter what is on your business card, I would argue you need to leverage a secondary role, that of disruptor, that of innovator, of business artist, and of entrepreneur, because really those are the skills and mindsets that will help us win in these highly competitive times. So I wanted to just introduce myself. I have a couple of brands that I really kind of represent. I own on the right hand side, you'll see the Traska and Company Eatery logo. So I live in Northeast Florida in a town called Ponte Vedra Beach, and we're not far from Jacksonville. The TPC Sawgrass is in our community, if you know that. So I've carried on my family's legacy through my restaurant, which has been really fun. I've been able to bring to life my family and my grandmother's recipes for the last 5.5 years. And even through COVID, believe it or not, we're doing all right. And it's been a real treat. But the other side of my world is the Frasca side. So Sarah Frasca is the brand that I use now for all of my innovation, keynote speaking, and also workshops. So here's a little glimpse into my world. I have the restaurant, of course. I have my 5 children, and then this kind of speaking and workshop business that's all focused on innovation. So kind of a collection of characters here and parts to my world. Pretty fun. The reason that I have reached out to the 1 Million Cups chapters is that I'm trying to develop the innovation side of my business. And I was a part of an agency that folded during COVID, unfortunately, and now I'm going on my own. So I like to talk about the fact that we're living in an age of creativity. That's really and truly the good news. I think it becomes our untapped potential. I believe it becomes this resource for us, whether we're leading teams, whether we're building businesses. It becomes that thing that can help us foster growth, thwart competition, etc. And it's very alive and well across the world. And if we can harness this, then we can really, again, survive and hopefully thrive. The good news is that we're all creative. This is a part of what makes us humans, right? Our brains are hardwired to be creative. There's a couple of other good pieces of news, because if you're like many that I speak to, many adults are like, no, I'm not creative. That's not me. And it's really, it lies, just below the surface. So the other good news here is that Harvard did a wonderful study and published a great book called Innovators DNA, that 80% of creativity is learned. So the good news here is that if you want to learn how to be creative, you can practice it just like any other muscle, right? If you want to play the guitar, you practice the guitar. If you want to learn how to be a golfer, you practice golf. If you want to learn how to be creative, you can practice the skills of creativity. So the other piece that they did that I think is really helpful is that they published the 5 most common creativity traits, and we can, again, practice these traits. So the first of these is association. This is linking seemingly disparate items together. The second is having this kind of, observation, this heightened level of awareness. The third is experimentation. This is having that creative confidence to be able to tinker, test and learn, even fail sometimes. Networking. So this one is bringing in divergent viewpoints so that we can have outsiders telling us, and by outsiders, I mean a poet, a philosopher, a physician, a physicist, an artist. I mean, anyone you can find to give you feedback on how would you approach this challenge. And you'll find new pathways, new inspiration from outsiders. Questioning, this is just having a beginner's mindset. So, the insatiable curiosity of children can add a lot of power, or acting like a child in, why, just continuing to probe, continuing to ask questions. I like to use the quote, expertise is often expertise is often the enemy of innovation. When we know too much, we become our own worst enemies. We thwart our own progress because we're moving our business, our decisions in the same manner, right? When we can have that outside perspective, when we can come at it from a different angle, that's when we can unleash new potential. So this is the setup. I would say, again, I truly believe that innovation is mission critical, whether we're trying to, solve the world's problems, whether we're trying to be more competitive, whether we're trying to help clients in a new manner. This is the powerful source of untapped potential. So my question and kind of the, what can 1 Million Cups do? How do we create urgency? How do I create urgency behind a value proposition that allows me to sell this? I think, it's not very often do I come across someone that says, no, innovation's not important. This is not something we need. But I haven't really cracked the code yet on how to get people to say, yeah, I know this is important and I'm ready to sign my team up for it. I'm ready to invest, to build the skills and have my team learn how to be more creative. So I can open it up, I think, Jim, if that's okay, just a kind of commentary and questions of what drives that urgency? What makes this something that someone wants to do now?
It is a great question, and I think that as we live in the age of the specialist for the past, 2 decades, this opens up something for the people that are, reading chats, that are, another way of looking at things. So if you have
Great.
questions or want to talk about this, I think you can just go ahead and unmute. Michael, I'm not cool enough to know what that means. FOMO.
Fear of missing out.
Fear of missing out.
Oh, great.
Yeah, for me, I create urgency trying to sell tickets by having like tiered pricing. Like if I have an event on a Friday, it's going to be a certain price until Wednesday. Then the price goes up for Wednesday and Thursday, and then your day of is a higher price. So FOMO and money, hit them in the wallet.
Okay, that's great.
Competitive advantage is huge. I work for a company called Axograph, and we develop medical technology within a niche market. And we've done that successfully with our creativity and ingenuity. The benefit we have there is we have no competition. We've blown it out of the water early, and now we're free to take the entire market space. As soon as you lose market space, companies are desperate to figure out how to get it back. What you're offering is the creativity aspect to take it back. So your target market may be filtered all the way down to companies who are already falling behind. And then once you have them, make enough money and then attack the ones who are already on top to maintain their position.
Okay, that's great. I mean, it's an interesting time to be selling this because, COVID has changed the landscape for most organizations. People obviously have been pivoting if their business, is thwarted or different in any manner, and I think most are. But so I think that's great. I think having kind of that, I don't know if I want to say rescue philosophy, but if they've had some challenges, if they've had losses, if they've had failure, I think going after to help, that might be a good angle, at least to start. So that's great.
You're also seeing a good time simply because we're moving away from classic development methodologies like waterfall and moving into agile, where companies are like, well, why can't we invest more into experimentation and prototyping and creativity? So that is also assisting you.
That's great. Wonderful.
Mason, did you want to share some ideas?
Well, if I can ever figure out how to unmute myself, yeah. I was just saying stagnation is always, it's a motivator if the business owner is savvy enough to realize they're actually stagnating. I've worked with a lot of small businesses in the past, particularly old businesses who fell into a comfort zone. And for, maybe decades, they had the same customers, loyal customers, repeat business. And then all of a sudden it just went away and they didn't do enough research as to the reason why. Maybe it was competitive. Maybe it was somebody else was innovating more than they were. Or maybe it was just the fact that, and most of the times this is the truth, they just didn't keep their ear to the ground and keep evolving. They were convinced that if it wasn't broke, why fix it? Well, they didn't take into account the fact that the world was changing around them. So yeah, that's all I wanted to add.
Great, Mason. Thank you.
I was just going to say this, Jonathan. I was just going to say the force function that government restrictions, regulations create for companies to innovate. I think that permeates time.
Great.
And John, can you break that down a little bit more for me?
Well, I mean, just look at history, right? The history of innovation comes from government stepping in when there are maybe social injustices or things of that nature, where you look at like child labor before the Industrial Revolution, right? And then just start looking at environmental considerations when we have to start thinking about the fact that people are acknowledging, some people are acknowledging at least, that the environment, that there's problems there, right? So if companies aren't pivoting, right, they end up like that first example where Google is now the owner of the map world. So that's kind of my opinion on it, is that the government setting out and setting forth restrictions and guidelines that hamstring companies, they can either look at that as prohibitive or they can look at it as opportunity through innovation. So that's the way I see it.
Yeah, you're describing outside motivations or outside, which is interesting because the outside motivations can play into the necessity, but I'm trying to, well, I mean, that's a really good component. I'm trying to also make them understand that there's an internal, there's probably better, and in fact, I have good metrics on this part. Employees feel more empowered. There's better retention because they feel like they're coming as their full self. They're able to be creative and challenge, the status quo. So I need to look at both aspects, and I think you're bringing up a really good point. Thank you.
Patrick?
Okay. Am I coming through okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right, good. So very good presentation. This is kind of of an interesting industry, the innovation consulting business. It's pretty well known, a lot of acquisitions. The history of venture capital investing versus corporate venture fund investing. If you were to look at the mix of funding sources and types of firms investing, what you would see is a crossover point a few years back where corporate venture capital money started to be more than private venture capital. The reason is exactly your core problem or pain point you're looking for, which is large organizations suffer from entropy and they stifle creativity and innovation due to the political morass that is a component of most organizational and corporate culture. You're talking with a bunch of entrepreneurs, and if you read the literature on being an entrepreneur, I always like to point out the Michael Gerber concept of first we're technicians, then we're inside of an organization where we rise to the supervisory or management level, and then we get fed up looking at the top level people above us that won't listen and won't change, and we say, I'm going to start my own business. And so, looking for those sort of markers would be good. Of course, always a good nose, sniffing for smoke, because first, their hair's on fire from the painful marketplace influencers. Secondly, other body parts catch on fire. So, back to the pain motivator. But in general, there's a big opportunity for firms. If you go out and look at some of the data from the Board of Innovation on acquisitions and current independent firms that are doing innovation consulting services in the UK, the vast majority have been acquired by larger firms. So, it is kind of a hot property. Your issue here is how do you get inside of large organizations, I think, because the larger consulting firms are probably already there, knocking on the door. So back to what Gabriel was talking about is looking for channel strategic partners, distributors, industry groups that you can get inside of and then get doors open for you somehow would be not a bad approach. Because I think you probably could put together a wealth of your own story and experience and success. Your real issue is how do I get in front of the right people, because I'm pretty sure I can close deals.
Yep, that's great.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Dylan has some comments. Dylan.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I appreciate that. First of all, I apologize for being late. I just had a lot going on, but I at least wanted to show up and just catching the tail end of this. I love it. I think just a couple comments and just kind of my thoughts feeding off of what you presented just in the few minutes I watched is just that we're all entrepreneurs in a sense that we all create, right? And so, being in on this call, we all create. So how do we create? We create by solving problems off our creation. And so, just feeding off that, if we can all come together and create because we all bring gifts and talents to the table, that creation brings that sense of passion, and that passion brings that urgency to move forward. And I'm writing a book on the Pollard P's, I call them, but it's what is your passion, your purpose, and your platform. So truly, you know, giving people that passion and creating that urgency based on your passion, but having that patience to be consistent through it all. So love what you do. And I'll follow you on social, and we can connect however that looks like.
Great.
But, you know, awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. That's wonderful.
Great comment.
Hey, can I get one more in there? So right now we're partnering and scaling Actigraph, and we are using companies like Tech Systems, which we're all familiar with. They offer services to identify problems and propose solutions. You may find success partnering with that kind of company who are already trusted to go in there and find problems, and they can recommend your solutions for counseling training. Because right now, I know my company would probably do it if it was recommended by a company like that, saying, yeah, you
great.
seem to have these issues, but here's someone who can train you to do better in that.
That's excellent.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, we've got Sarah, Chicago style deep dish or New York style thin crust. So neither. This is more of a, let's see here, I'll show you another picture. So this is our traditional pizza. We actually do a personal pizza that's very thin. We call it our cracker pizza, made from the same dough, but it's very thin. And this one is a little bit more of that hand-tossed style. So that's the answer to that one. If you come to Ponte Vedra Beach or the Jacksonville area, let me know. Be happy to host you at the restaurant.
Thank you. I was trying to put that question into the context of your talk, and it wasn't working. So I'm speechless for a
Oh,
second.
yeah. No, the pizza's outstanding. We make homemade dough every single day, which is really a lost art in the pizza world. So
I will drive for pizza.
Yeah, see, there you go. We've got great craft beer to go with it. And
I'm on my way.
Yep.
The one comment I wanted to make was there was a article in the Harvard Business Review in 2008 saying the MFA is the new MBA. And I always thought that was just, everyone knew it, but working at a university, one of our higher level people, his son, like, went into arts, and he was clearly a little distraught by the choice. And I was like, but, you know, the MFA is the new MBA, and like, he's got a great career and ahead of him, but he had never heard it. So potentially kind of targeting those high level people that have children that have gone into the lesser fields, you know, of arts and humanities, may be a way to create demand.
yeah, that's great. I think those that have are a little bit more comfortable with, you know, even just looking outside the box and thinking a little differently. So that's great. Ironically, I was an art major in college.
See, it works.
Yeah, pretty good.
And I think all art entrepreneurs are artists in some capacity.
That's right. I believe that. That's
So,
great.
Brilliant stuff. Let me check Facebook. Yeah. So with that, I think we have to ask the question of how can our community support you?
Yeah, you know, obviously the feedback here today, and if anyone has any further thoughts or ideas of, you know, kind of again those points of selling, I think finding the way that I convert someone from saying, yeah, innovation is important, to no, I have to invest. I have to have this type of an organization that knows how to think, knows how to pivot and think differently. Other than that, I would say, you know, I've really had a great time talking to different 1 Million Cups chapters, and folks have asked me to speak, you know, to a couple of nonprofits, a couple of higher education spots, you know, with students or even just with administration. So, you know, you can certainly keep me in mind. I'd love to continue to give back as many speeches and hours as I can. It's a little easier during the virtual time because, you know, I can speak to groups all over. And then, you know, if you can think of an organization or a client that I could help, you know, from a consulting perspective, just keep me in mind there. So thank you for the question.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us and spending time here. Casey's leading the way with the applause. Thank you. Let's all give her a round of silent applause.